But welcome to another live episode of Life Check Yourself. I am super excited to be here meeting so many new people on YouTube and Instagram and Substack. Um, I have a doozy for you. Oh my gosh. If you are a mother or a daughter, this one's for you. Dr. Allison Alford is a communication expert, author, and speaker, and she specializes in uncovering the invisible labor women do in families and society. Amen. The invisible labor. When I read that, I was just like, please, yes. Um, Especially the often overlooked role of adult daughters. She's got a PhD in communication studies from the University of Texas at Austin, nearly 2 decades teaching experience. She's going to bring deep research and her real world perspective to this conversation about identity, relationship, and all the work that women do behind the scenes. By the way, this groundbreaking work on what she calls daughtering, and we're going to talk about that, has resonated with audiences across academic, business, all sorts of public platforms. And she's going to talk to us about how we reframe and name the mental, emotional, and logistical labor that we contribute often without recognition. So I'm super excited. You're also a teacher at Baylor University. She lives in Texas. She's got two teenagers, and we're just so excited that you're here.
Thank you. Thanks, Barney, for having me. I'm delighted to be here from Texas, and
From
uh,
Texas. Hook 'em
yes,
horns.
and at school, I did go get my Longhorn education after I got my Aggie education, and now I'm happily a Baylor Bear. So I'm glad
That's
to join you
amazing. You can
today.
live anywhere in the state now and you're going to
That's
be
right.
okay.
It's just the Texas tour.
I love that. All right. Well, oh my gosh. I was literally just on a coaching call with a client who has 3 children from uh, basically a marriage that didn't last long. That when she had these kids when she was in her 20s, now she's like, close to 60. And there's a lot of alienation with those 3 kids. She's got another daughter from her actual long-term marriage. Her husband passed away. We were talking about all the books about like alienation, parent alienation, like so many challenging. She was telling me that she was reading about like there's a whole segment of people that are alienating parents like in older age. Like this is like a huge conversation. So I'm super happy you're here. So
Yeah.
let's just start with the term that you coined, daughtering. So tell me about like when did you realize this was a thing and not just a personal experience that you were going through?
Yeah, doddering, it's a word that's been around as a word for a while, and, people can make anything into a verb.
Right?
But what I realized when I was doing my research on this, starting with my dissertation and continuing over the next 10 years, is that it's really important as adult daughters that we think of our job in families actively, that we think about how we show up. We have a choice in how to show up, and the way we show up, it's a lot of responsibility, and so it's a form of work. And this was something that I really started to notice when, I am a parent. I was learning about family communication. I was learning about romantic relationships, parenting relationships, and thinking, gee, there's just so much out there on how to be a good spouse, or how to be a good worker at your job, or how to be a
Right.
good friend. And there's not much out there for how to be a good daughter. What is it people want? What is expected? Why do we all think that we know what we're supposed to be doing, and yet nobody ever actually talks about it? So that's where I decided to put my research emphasis.
It's so amazing. Like I have 3 daughters. One's 30, one's like 27, the other one's 23. Um, and one of my daughters is going through her own thing. And so you'll appreciate this, but I was like flabbergasted. She was like, sometimes being in this family is just so much emotional labor. Like our family is a lot. And I was like, are we? what, me? Like me, I feel like I'm so chill vibes. My parents both passed away, so my daughtering was very short, right? But I see my peers, my friends, going through this. My cousin, who's like a sister, her mom just passed away. She was 100, so she was in that space. Now she's almost 70, right? So this is a really, really, really big topic. So what's the comment? Why do we feel, as because we're women anyway, so we think a lot. Why do you think that we get caught in this trap? And is this like a cultural phenomenon now, or do you think it's just been going on forever, but it was never named and it was just part of what we did as women?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say, Marnie, I think what's super important is for you to recognize that your daughtering continues even when your parents aren't around.
Ooh,
And
okay.
this is something I learned by talking to daughters. It's part of my research and thinking, being a daughter is not just about talking to your parent one on one or driving them somewhere or cooking them something. Big part of daughtering is in our identity. So I would imagine that you continue traditions that your parents taught
Yes.
you, or you
I
think about
yes.
the family name, or the spaces that families are in, and that you have to share those memories. That's daughtering. You're daughtering,
Oh,
and you will be
daughtering. I'm so
daughtering
happy because
until
I
the
was feeling a little
day.
left out. I'm like, I
No,
feel
we are
like I'm
daughters
daughtering.
from the day we are born to the day we die. And
Oh,
so much of what we look at as women, we only seem to give ourselves credit for the times that we're like face to face, that we are like actively doing something. But what I noticed in the research is that there's a lot more going on. And so it's things like your daughter mentioned, it's the emotions, it's carrying of the emotions, it's worrying, it's solving conflict. Even if it's not conflict between you and your parent, it could be on your parent's behalf with their
right,
mom or
right.
their
Yep.
sibling. And then there's the mental work of, planning something, holding space on your calendar, giving, being a CEO for a situation. So there's so many kinds of daughtering that we don't give ourselves or others credit for. And I think that's why we're exhausted, because we're actually doing a lot of stuff, but not putting a name to it or noticing it or giving ourselves credit or getting compliments from anybody about it. And that's a huge problem. That
Oh my
leads to
gosh.
us feeling overused, burnt out, exhausted, and ultimately we think there's no solution. I'm just going to disconnect. But that solution doesn't end up making us happier most of the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm doing this workshop on Sunday, like a free thing about making decisions. And I was talking in one of my emails and posts about like this exhaustion, because the decisions that we make don't necessarily need to be like, should I quit my job or should I move to, to Florida? Um, every day, in the spirit of daughtering, from what I'm hearing you say, we are making so many decisions. Like,
Yes. Yes.
how do I take my PTO? How do I navigate between possibly mom and dad? Like, I'm just seeing like this freaking everywhere, and it's creating this exhaustion. So when women that you work with hear the phrase the invisible labor of adult daughters, what happens in their faces or bodies?
Great question. I think once we start to talk about invisible labor, people feel a lot of relief from that. So, and this is something important for the parents to hear when you're a parent learning about your daughter, thinking that daughtering is work, and you think, oh, I never want my daughter to think this is work or she has to do this. But that's just a fact of life. When I take care of my house. I'm working on my house and I can also enjoy it and also be glad I did it, you know? And so when women get this language, it
Yeah.
doesn't create more conflict. It creates relief. It
Yeah.
creates clarity. It creates kind of an opening portal in your brain where you're like, I see it now. I see all these other lovely people doing it. I'm doing it. And the result isn't that people wanna stop doing it. It's not like
Right.
we call it work and then they're like, "Oh, great,
I
I'm
don't want
gonna
to do
quit
that.
doing
Yeah. We're
that."
like, oh, this
It
is
it's
real.
Yeah, it
It's
just
a
makes it
thing.
where you can calibrate it. Now okay, it's a thing. Now I'm gonna manage it like an asset, like a job, like work, and I'm gonna give it its proper place in my life.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you're listening on any of the platforms and you went like, "Oh my god, this is me. I'm at the invisible labor of adult daughters." Put a yes or a thank you for naming it in the comments. This is really huge. So, what's the biggest misunderstanding you think people have about adult daughters and caregiving at this time of our lives?
The biggest misunderstanding that women have about daughtering is that you're predestined to do it, that you should be good at it, that every daughter has to do it the same way, that
Mm,
society is judging you for
okay.
not doing it in a certain way. And we're kind of allowing ourselves to live inside a trap that's partially of our own making because
Wow.
we are society, we are culture, and we buy into whether or not there are rules or perfect ways to do daughtering. And as long as we keep being down on ourselves that I'm not a good enough daughter, or people tell me, you wouldn't want to talk to me because I'm not really doing all that good daughtering stuff that you're talking about. And like, no, every daughter is doing daughtering. And I just want to hear what it's like and what it means to you and how you manage it. So we have to take up this mantle of talking about it,
Okay.
giving ourselves credit, giving our peers, our friends, our siblings credit for their work, and then adjusting it appropriately to meet our lifestyle so that we can hang on to our families because we need our families. We love them. We're not trying to get rid of them. We just need it to be a reasonable size and a reasonable amount in our lives.
I
So
love
that's a
that.
big misconception is that like I'm supposed to already know how to do this and be good at it without ever having talked about it or trained for it.
Well, yeah, and I think what you said was so huge, and I'm all about screw the should life, is that you're looking around to see what other people are doing uh with their parents, right? I had another client who had siblings and aging parents, and she realized she was in the role in her family of being the good, like the good kid. So she was never delegating, never asking for help until she stopped. But she was like, "Oh, that's my job and that's how I get like cookies. Like I'm the good daughter, right?" And so I think those shoulds are so prevalent. Um so I'm curious, and by the way, if you feel like you have been thinking like, am I doing it right, or I'm a bad daughter, or like um all of that, please let us know in the comments for sure. Um so tell me, when you think about like this whole idea of daughtering and how it is impacting our identity, especially for the women that are listening that are super high functioning and really capable. Um, and it's this invisible weight that you speak of. So how is it shaping or impacting our identity? Um, and and how is that reinforcing the exhaustion and the too much?
Yeah. Picture your cell phone and there's some app that's running in the background and you never click on it, you never look at it, but you also never close it. And you realize
Mm,
you're looking at your phone day after day, like, why is the battery running down so quickly?
that's
Why,
me.
and then one day or sometimes you notice it like, oh, of course, that app is running. It has to be running. My phone says I have to keep it running. um, that's daughtering. And the reason that we're getting exhausted is we're actually doing daughtering all the time. Like you said, even when we're not around our parents, we're making thousands of decisions a day. We're making choices and trade offs. But we're never kind of pulling that app to the front and saying, okay, what do I like about this? What do I get from this? What is important about this to me? What is purpose driven or a values level thing in my life related to being a daughter? So we keep it buzzing in the background and we let it drain our battery, but we never really take stock of it in a good way, in a pleasant
Mhm.
way, in a way where we can say, I feel really honorable about being someone's daughter. And so in my family, my parents are really proud of me for finishing my education, for finishing my PhD, which I went back to school to get that degree after I was married with 2 kids. And it
Wow.
took the whole village to do it. I needed my parents and my friends and my spouse, everybody to help. And so when I finished it, I credited everyone. Everybody got this degree together.
Right.
And I knew that my parents wanted that for me. They knew that I wasn't gonna be hanging around, baking cakes or bread
Right.
for family meal. I was gonna be researching and writing something, but they wanted for me to reach that potential. They believe in education, they think it's great. And so by doing something for me, I am living out a legacy that they wanted for
Right.
me as their daughter. And those are the kinds of things that, unless we bring them front and center and take a good look at them and say, "Oh, this is shiny and pretty. This is pretty cool. I like it," then daughtering just stays in the background, draining our battery, and we're never getting any of the good bits from it or assessing what is the meaning of this in my life.
So
So
what
I
do
think
you
we do that as mothers, though.
Yeah,
And we
well,
do that with,
yes.
yeah, with our marriages. We celebrate those real big and out front, and we don't do that as daughters because of its taken for grantedness.
Yeah, it's like the silent killer in the background. Um, so again, I'm just thinking of all these clients I've worked with, and a lot of them don't have great relationships with their moms, or their parents. And now they're like sacrificing their life. And I'm wondering two questions for you. One is, how do you reconcile that? And then how would you go about saying like, wow, I'm actually sabotaging myself, or I'm over functioning for this person, or I'm trying to make up for something, or still trying to get like good girl vibes? Like, what's the process to actually figure out what's the authentic way for you when you don't have this amazing loving relationship?
Yeah. We did a big research study just over the last 2 years where we interviewed 300 women in these one on one interviews, asking them about their relationship. And that it was particularly about their mother.
Okay.
You can be a daughter to a mother or father, but we know from research that the relationship with a mother, between a mother and daughter, is typically one of the most important over a whole lifetime.
Okay.
And yet, what we found was we asked them to rate the quality of their relationship. So we could kind of interview some people who have it great, some people meh, and some people, meh, terrible.
Right.
And what we found was it was really easy to recruit people in the middle. And I don't think women are aware that most other women also feel meh, middle of the road.
Right.
That's what I call
Okay.
the messy middle. There are not that many people that have a quote unquote great, close, intimate, conflict-free relationship with their parent. That's
Okay.
actually somewhat of a myth. Or we think that that's happening because we're watching the highlight reel on social media and
Right.
we're only seeing, mom's 70th birthday, or we went on a cruise together and we're only seeing the cute stuff. We're
Right.
not realizing the vast majority of women have a pretty good, okay, sometimes not great, but really not terrible relationship with their mom.
Right. Okay.
That and well, that's who I'm talking to. Is if you
Yeah.
already have a perfect relationship with your mom, you don't need this book. If you're estranged and you have a narcissist parent or there's some abuse there, I can't help you. I'm not a trauma specialist.
Right.
But the book
I
I've
was gonna
written,
say, we want our producer
yeah,
to put the link to the book in the chat
yes.
for sure.
I'm so excited about it. It's called Good Daughtering. And you said, well, what do people do? What do they do to fix it? If they want it to be you're in that messy middle, but you want it to get a little bit better, or you want to feel
Yeah.
a little bit better about the relationship, even if your mom doesn't change. There's some activities in here at the end of every chapter to help you walk through figuring out what is it I want for my relationship? What can be changed? What can I change about me? How can I talk to my mom about this? And I think in general, kind of a general way to say it is we need a rubric. We
Yeah.
need like a scorecard for ourselves, and we write it down, and then it can't change. So if I say to myself, so this is one example of something I put on my rubric. I want to visit my parents in their home once a quarter.
Yeah.
That's 4 times a year. They come to visit me sometimes, and sometimes we have more than that. But I wrote that down. Like,
I
if
love
I
that.
get that, then I was an A plus, full points in that on that row. Then the next part of that is I have to write down phone calls. I write down how much did I hold my tongue? How many arguments did I break up? How much money did I, put towards dinners or every category I can think of. And then I say to myself, all right, I'm going to try to do all these things and I'm going to tally it up. And the score that I'm aiming for is a
Okay.
B plus.
I love that because, like,
A
why
B
go for an
plus
A?
daughter. Right.
Oh,
I
that's
don't have enough
amazing.
time and energy to go for an A. So I might be an
Right.
A in any one of the elements,
I love
but
it.
overall I'm just going for a B plus. And I
I
have to give myself a break.
Well, that leads to my next question. So we have one comment from Jay Woody. First of all, she's totally relating and says 100%. And maybe we need her to clarify a little bit, but she said, um, "How do you daughter yourself in your family?"
Such a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah,
Daughtering is relational. So most of our daughtering comes when interacting with others. But as we started out today saying, a big part of our daughtering is our identity.
right,
So
right.
how do we daughter ourselves? One of the things that we can do is bring our identity as a daughter into situations and ask, what would, if I treated myself as a daughter, the daughter of these people, the daughter in this family, the daughter in this context, what would I want a daughter to feel like? And usually that's a little bit nicer and sweeter
Yes,
than the way we treat ourselves if we're cracking the whip and we're like, come on, you're supposed to be perfect at this. Um, and so we can daughter ourselves by bringing our daughtering identity out and being
I love
gentle and
that.
kind to her.
That is so great. And
It's a
and
great
because
question.
and it is. Thanks, Woody. I hope that you follow both of us on Substack. And thank you for playing along. Um, I think this is also really interesting because one thing you said that really hit me is there's this doing it, the energy you're doing it from, right? You're not trying to like perform, daughter.
Right.
You're daughtering you like from a place of genuine compassion and love and connection and all those things when it's challenging. So if you were to say like, is there a difference between being a good daughter and an exhausted daughter? What would that look like?
I think the Venn diagram of good daughter and exhausted daughter has a lot of overlap. And
Oh,
we're
tell
trying
me.
to,
Okay.
I think you can be a good daughter and be tired and be annoyed and be frustrated. I mean, one of the things that like to
Mm,
talk about with my sister is certain things that I do as a daughter or on a holiday or something like this is so annoying. I don't want to do this.
right.
But I show up anyway because it's valuable to the family. And
Right.
ultimately, I like being a member of a family. And I don't want to quit being a member or get kicked out. So I have a responsibility. It's like saying, if I'm again back to homeowner, if I'm a homeowner, I've got to clean the gutters. And I don't like every single thing I do. I can be an exhausted homeowner and still be a grateful homeowner. Like, what a privilege. And I love that. And so we have to kind of allow ourselves to have overlapping senses. I can be annoyed by these people, exhausted by these people, frustrated by some of this, and still grateful and still think, I'm doing it. I'm showing up. I'm here. So why am I being so critical with myself? That's being said, we have to watch for overextending ourselves, right?
Right. Well,
Because
how do you know? So what's the litmus test? Like I would say people probably binge daughtering, you're like I'm
Yeah,
gonna, and then you go, "Ah, I just can't do it. I just can't ask anymore."
yeah.
So what's the litmus test? How do people
Yeah.
know? What's the
You'll
rubric?
know that you are overdoing or over trying in your daughtering if it feels worse to be part of the family than
Mm,
good. And so you should, as a member of a family, families are so important. They're the backbone of society. They're how we care for each other and get care. They're how we parent. They're how we live in neighborhoods. Like families are so valuable and important. But we often take for granted the parts about being in a family we like, which is having someone to call in an emergency or somebody who might give us money if I had a flat tire and needed it, or just someone who will listen to my crap for,
right.
20 minutes if I need somebody on the phone. Um, and so we have to, again, take a good look, take a hard look at the relationship and say, am I trying so hard? I'm burnt out. I'm exhausted. This is not any fun at all. And the value of being in the family so low that
Mm.
it's there's nothing enjoyable coming out. That means we've overextended ourselves. And we need to recalibrate because the goal is to hang on, to love these people who love you, even if they're really bad at loving you well. They are
Oh,
still of
that's
value.
so, like, right? Like, how do I show up even though these people who are doing the best they can, who are like completely have their own
Yep.
challenges, right? And limitations. How do you do it even if they're not loving you the way that you want to be loved? And I think I see so many people, and I'd love for you to speak about what you learned in the research. You know, they're doing this, their come from is to try to get the love they didn't get in childhood, or to finally be like the favorite, or finally to get the acknowledgement or validation. And I see so much frustration when, there's not like anything heartfelt coming back. It's almost like an expectation, or they're just not communicative. So what do you notice? How does your daughtering different if you haven't resolved some of those early childhood traumas, big T's and little T's?
Yeah, a lot of the women who I've spoken to as part of our research studies and women who I just meet who want to tell me their stories. I have this like tell me your story on my forehead and I love that. So keep doing that. Please show up with your stories. Talk a lot about bringing childhood ideals and ideas into adulthood with them. And I think one of the reasons why that happens is because once we achieve adulthood, we're not really talking about daughtering enough to readjust it to what is it like to be a 20
Okay.
something daughter, a 30 something daughter. So we're bringing this latent idea forward. And what we could really use is some more talking about it. And whether that's with a trained therapist, a counselor, a coach, or I think just a good girlfriend wine night sometimes can be
Right.
helpful too. We have to bring the idea of being a daughter and its importance and its value in our lives forward. And part of the way that we do that is as women, not always centering male relationships like marriages, but
Right.
thinking of our female relationships. As Americans, we need to recognize not always centering career relationships, but thinking of this honorable category that's just really been hushed. The daughter role has been hushed. But the
Yeah.
more that we talk about it as a beautiful, honorable role that extends all the way to the end of our lives, and we have to, the better we get at talking about it, the better we can find it a place in our life. But as we talk about it, we have to remember that we're meant to receive in daughtering and give. Just like living
Mm,
in a community, we are not always going to get what we want from these people because they're flawed and they're limited too. So, I when I think of doing daughtering, I also think of what my responsibility is to give. And whether
mm,
that's daughtering my parent or my in law, or sometimes I even daughter my neighbors, then I have to recognize that part of daughtering is that I have a choice to give that because I want to, because I think it's honorable. And if I've given it, then I gave it as a gift, and I don't need anyone else to validate for me that it was honorable. I believe it's an honorable
Uh,
endeavor to do daughtering.
yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, in the end, it's like you want it to feel resonant. And I would think like if I was going to translate into the work I do on soul mapping, right? Like your soul, there's like these unique ways of being you that you can daughter that don't have to follow what other people are doing that feels
Yes.
totally right for you based on your own experience and context. Okay, so I think Woody asked us, and we'll answer this in a minute, Woody, like, what do you do in your family around this? But I would like to know, like, if you were going to share one communication shift that could immediately change the dynamic between adult daughters and their mothers, what would that be?
My key tip that you can take right away and implement right away is microdosing your daughtering. All right.
I love that.
So, what I want women to see is that daughtering is not just, I need to show up for 3 days straight in my parents' home with food and energy and a smile for 72 hours. You
Right.
can give little bits of your daughtering, and you can, when you notice them and you check it off the list, I did it. You can feel really proud of that, but you can preserve a lot of your resources. So maybe you send an Instagram funny, a Facebook funny. Maybe you find an article that came across the news on your phone and you text it and you say something like, "This made me think of that trip we took," or maybe you think to yourself, "I want to have a really great 4th of July holiday this year. I'm going to set aside $50 today to start building up a fund." Like everything doesn't have to be that you give it to their face or that they know about it, but you do a little bit of daughtering, you give yourself credit for it, and then you move on. And it's just these
Ah,
micro doses of daughtering.
micro doses of doddering. So let's talk about boundaries.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure we get very specific, right? This is a huge pain point for those exhausted, busy women who are giving to everyone. Um, how do you set a boundary without feeling like you're betraying the family or becoming the difficult one or disappointing mom?
Well, you can't. You are disappointing someone else. You
Love
are
that
uh you
message.
you are some by setting a boundary, which is to say, this is how much I have to give, and then after that resources spent, there is no more, means that there's both discipline and denial in setting a
Mhm.
boundary. So the discipline is, I'm going to do up until this point, then I've said I'm going to stop. At that point, I stop. Anyone who's expecting more after that because they're unreasonable or they weren't listening, they're going to be disappointed. But if I don't keep my boundary, then the person who's going to be disappointed is me. I'm
Right.
abandoning me if I don't keep that boundary, or I'm abandoning my children or my workplace or my art career because I meant those resources to go to this other endeavor. And so when we set a boundary, we have to be aware that it's very likely somebody won't like it. And we have to let that be okay, while noticing that what it also gives back to the relationship is structure. When people know what to expect, they might not like it right away, but they adjust to it over time.
Right.
And it
Right.
actually helps provide structure in a relationship. We give back to ourselves by providing time, energy, resources for something else that's cool that we want to do. And we're setting a great example for either our peers or our children or other generations of what healthy dynamics look like, and that it's also okay for not everybody to feel happy and okay all the time. We can't make everybody feel happy all the time. We just got to let them feel what they're feeling.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah. And I think it's really interesting because if we don't do that, then we end up like what you said, we end up being resentful
Yeah.
and that ends up leaking out into the relationship and then it just feeds it, right? And so um there's going to be pain, right? So be in the pain and then start setting those boundaries, so that loving boundaries,
Yeah.
um, so that all parties kind of know what's going on. I always say like, um, expectations or resentments waiting to happen,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
discussing those things is really, really important. Um, so if a woman is listening and she's been carrying far more, um, than she realized, what's the first internal shift that she needs to make?
The first internal shift that women need to make when they're thinking about daughtering is has to do with doing the thinking work. So we're doing
Mm,
the work of noticing our role as a daughter, our choice being a daughter, our agency, our ability to have different things happen if in the future if we don't like how it's going now. And it shifts us into a position of power because
mm,
many times when we're dissatisfied with our daughtering, we feel stuck. And why do we feel stuck? We feel powerless. This person or these people are unhappy. They keep sucking me dry. They can never get enough. I can never be enough for them. And those types of statements and that feeling are coming from a place of very low power and
mm.
trapped and
Yeah.
like a scared animal. We're not going to react well. We don't feel good in those situations. So we have to take back mentally first our agency. I am in control of my life. I can decide. I can handle it, even if people are upset with me because I know that there's value in doing other things in my life or with my time. And I know that if I make changes, then the relationship shifts will come along. It may not be right that moment I make the first change, but it will get better if I am working towards having a better life and being a better person. The other dominoes will fall in that way. So, those are some mental shifts that we need at first to empower ourselves that this is a worthy endeavor, that we're worth it, that we deserve to have a beautiful life that we want, a beautiful family. And we can't make everybody be who we want them to be, but we
Amen.
can embrace the way things are and enjoy it more, just as it is.
I wanted to use an example because what he asked, how I don't know if she was talking about you or me, but how I do it in my family. It was just you made me think of a time. So recently, my daughter, we went on a family, we went on an international trip. We came back to where my two of my kids were for Thanksgiving. We had a lovely Thanksgiving, blended family. And then my daughter's 30th birthday was like 5 or 6 days later. And I was like, girl, I need to go home, right? Because I'm coming back in another week to go on another family trip. And I set this boundary and I was like, "Oh, I set this boundary with my daughter." And um, she was so disappointed. And I was like, kind of remembering what you're saying, like, oh, she's gonna be so disappointed. I wanted to really share this because I was so proud of her in the end. She said, I totally understand how you feel, but let me tell you why this is super important to me. And I could just feel my body being like, oh, she's pushing my boundaries. She's wrong. I'm right. And then I really started listening to her from like that heart space, kind of like why it's important and what she really wanted. And it was amazing. Like my whole I totally shifted. I was like, wait, no, actually, thought about it overnight and kind of meditated. And I was like, wait, no, I do want to be there for her. And I just think that's really modeling kind of what you're talking about. I was like, she was asking me not saying like, you're a bad mom because you don't come. She was like, I accept how you feel. And also, I'd really love for you to hear what's going on for me. And then I was like, oh, okay. And I was so
I th-
glad that she told
yeah,
me that. And so I was like, wow, this is what adult communicate. And this is what I think you're talking about is
yeah,
in these boundaries and these internal shifts. We both were in our power, but we both didn't have ego. We both were just really being present. And it's hard because you just want to
yeah.
be like your parents were, or, you know, set a boundary just for the sake of setting it.
Yeah, it's kind of I think it's such a great example of another kind of hidden form of daughtering. Sometimes daughtering is about getting mothering, like seeking
Right.
out the
Yeah.
mothering that you want. And I want to encourage daughters to we're thinking all the time about, am I a good enough daughter? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? Ask for the mothering that you want. If you want
Right.
your parent to show up for that week or to watch the kids or to, help you buy a pool in the backyard, I mean, you can ask, right? We don't know if they'll give it, but it's such a beautiful relational way that to show that daughtering is not just about doing for your parent. It's also about drawing your parent towards you, especially in times of need. So that's the beauty of family, is that when it's our turn to be in need, we can draw our family toward us as long as we're still connected to them. And then when they have a time of need, we draw towards them. The key is that we've got to trade off sometimes. We can't let one person always be the,
Right.
the
Well,
the
I
the
think what you're
centrifugal
saying
force.
is it's so interesting because like and this is why I just wanted everyone to hear about you. Like the mothering, daughtering, like when your kids are young or when you're young, it's like very finite. And there's a ton of stuff about it, right? But like as we age and our kids become adults, and that was the big wake up call for me was like, this isn't just about them. I love being with my kids. I want them to be with me. I just love spending time with them. It was like, oh, wait, they still need me to be their mother. I
Yeah.
don't know how. Like, there's no manual,
Right.
right? So I think
Yeah.
what you're saying for daughters is to like, as adults, to say like, this is what I need from you and explain it from that adult thing. Then you're both evolving the relationship versus just being like stuck in like the past or like the way past, right? Like generational,
Yeah.
um,
And you're being
or like in
clear.
anger.
You're being so clear, and they either do it or they don't, and may have a boundary or they don't. But when we're not clear, then it's very unlikely that we'll serendipitously meet each other's needs really well, right? We have to be clear about what our needs are. And I think, daughtering could be wildly different things. Last summer, we were heading into the school year, and I had been out of the country doing a study abroad with students in London. I hadn't seen my parents in a while, and they were eager to see me and hang out with me. And I appreciate that my mom and dad really like me, but I have a husband and these two kids and a job, and I'm just busy. I don't have like hangout days. So they were like, well, what can we do? And I said, do you know what I really would like? I would like you to come to my kids' sports.
That's
Come
great.
visit, stay overnight, we'll do dinner, we'll watch the sport. I will feel like I gave my kids a grandparent experience. You will get to be with me. I will daughter you.
Yep.
And I was also telling them what I wouldn't do. Like, I'm not available for just a you and me coffee date hangout. I don't have that room in my calendar right now. Not that I won't ever in the future, but I was clear, and they did it, and they showed up, and it's really been lovely in this one season. I have a senior in high school, to have that from them and to rely on them and
Oh.
to feel like they're not disappointed that I'm not more available. We've made a pact about how we're going to make it work in this season. And then we'll readjust when it comes to the next season.
Ugh, I love that. We have a family vision that we all live in the same cul-de-sac. That's probably not going to happen, but when it does, I'll make sure they read your book. I'll be like, this is my
Yes.
operating manual, guys. So just yeah. So here we go. I have one question as we kind of round
Yes,
the
ma'am.
corner to an end, but what do feminists say about like all of this work? Like I'm so fascinated with that whole
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, this is a super feminist topic, right? So, feminism is noticing that women are equal to men and have equal rights and equal access. And so, part of being a feminist is noticing when we live in a patriarchal world that's dominated by men. And for women, that can often mean that there's an over expectation for being maternal, for being motherly, for being
Okay.
reproductive
Yeah.
agents. So, what happens with women in a patriarchal society is we get valued for the maternal, for mothering, for having children. And we are not as valued for being daughterly, for and there's so many women who are not married and not mothers. It's not just women who are unmarried their
Mm.
whole life, but 25-year-olds, your 23-year-old isn't
Yep.
married, right?
Yep.
And they're still doing daughtering. And as women, as feminists, we want to shine a spotlight on women's whole selves. All of our complexities are beautiful, worthwhile. Our bodies are valuable for doing daughtering, even when we don't do with our bodies any mothering. And so I think it's such a feminist topic to say, go daughters, and
Right.
let's look at that positionality in our lives and how we can embrace it and we can glorify it, magnify it. So that we're not just constantly using the language and the lens of mothering all the time. That's
Right. Oh, so
patriarchy.
powerful. Yeah, so powerful. Um, so how do you hope women feel after they read Good Daughtering? Because I think everyone who's listening needs to buy this for their daughter, or if you are a daughter, buy
Yes.
it.
I want women to feel seen and
Okay.
relieved.
Mm,
And then I want women to feel excited to make reasonable changes. So, like I said, the book starts out by talking about what is daughtering, and you need to like notice it in your life. And you have this aha of all this stuff that you're doing, that your sister is doing, your brother is doing or not doing. What is your dad, your mom? You start to awaken to these things, which can then create a little pain point because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing so much and nobody ever says thank you. But when
yeah.
you move on in the book, you move on to, I get to do daughtering my way and I
Mm,
can make changes. And I can do that by setting boundaries or making decisions or a rubric or starting a new tradition in my family that is a tradition I like instead of the one that those other people want to do that I don't like.
right.
And by the end of it, the transformation is empowered. You know, I can show up as my whole self, my full self. I am a daughter, and I like that about me, and I want to keep doing it
Oh,
as optimized as I can.
I love that. Okay, I have real quick rapid fire ending here, new
Okay,
for our live stream. One sentence every daughter needs to hear.
I am a good enough daughter already.
Ugh, a boundary that changed your own life.
Deciding how much to travel to see my parents and reducing that to a manageable amount.
A myth about caregiving you want to retire.
That caregiving is only done for elderly and that caregiving is the right term to describe what daughters are doing.
Oof.
So
And
we need to retire that.
I love this. And last, a word women can stop using about themselves immediately.
Stop saying you're mothering your mother and talk about daughtering your mother.
Oh my God. Boom. Mic drop. I love it. That's so fun. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to drop all the links for Dr. Allison. You can find her on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You definitely want to get this book. She's even on LinkedIn. And definitely, if you're on Substack, I mean, follow, subscribe. She's daughtering101.substack.com. Our producer Imran's going to put all of those things. This is an amazing book. I'm so excited for you, having released a book last year. I know how exciting and challenging and fun it is. So I just cheering you. And for all of you who are coming from other places, come to Substack. It's a really fun place to be. You're going to meet so many amazing humans like Dr. Allison. You'll get notices about all the live streams that we're doing and other fun stuff. We're having a workshop on Sunday to help you make decisions. One of them can be, how much am I going to see my parents this year? If you've been agonizing with it, with your spouse, with your partner, with your, and it's really challenging, come, we'll help you make the decision. All you have to do in the comments is leave the word reset. It's Sunday, 9 a.m. Mountain, and we will absolutely send you the link. But for now, remember, it is always and in always your responsibility to life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.